When you're roasting coffee, there's quite a few chemical reactions that take place, and there's different ways that you break up the roasting process. The first, the way that you know the coffee is, let's say, at its very minimum light roast, ready to go, is what we call first crack.
Get inspired. Transform your life. Welcome to Best Interest Radio.
Hi everybody, as some of you may know, I lost over 100 pounds and transformed my life in a lot of different ways. And since then, it's become my mission to help other people do the same. I'm looking for 3 more clients who are ready to transform their life in whatever aspect. I'm also launching a group program called The Mindset of Weight Loss, which is focused on my ebook. So if this interests you, please reach out, send me an email, message me on Instagram, Facebook, you name it. Check out the link in the description to find out more. Okay, so today on the podcast we have Conor Conway, and that's an awesome name, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sure you get that all the time. I don't know. It just flows well together. Anyways, Conor Conway is the owner of, is it pronounced Epoch or Epic?
We do Epic. They're both proper, but Epic is how we chose to.
Okay, so a lot of people probably mispronounce it and call it Epoch, because we did at first for sure, but I know it's called Epic, and it's definitely like an epic place to be. For those listening who have never heard of it before or a place like it, they do coffee tasting, which is, a little bit out of the ordinary from what I've heard from. Like, I've never heard of it in my life till Conor opened up his business. Like, what was it, a year or two now?
Yeah, June 2020.
Oh, June 2020. Mm-hmm. Cool, yeah. And so you basically go in there, and Conor is the lovely host, along with, you probably have a couple other people that do it now too. Mm-hmm. And they brew like the same roast of coffee in like 4 or 5 different ways, and they teach you all about coffee, and like you notice and test all the different like ways of brewing. Like it just adds like each way of brewing is like a different flavor and different way to experience the coffee itself. So I mean, in the same way, like a wine connoisseur notices like the subtle differences in wine, and like somebody who likes beer will notice the subtle differences there and stuff. Like coffee's a big thing. So
and coffee can be complicated too. Something I didn't realize. We try and take what is complicated and make it more approachable and digestible for somebody at home. And this model was not like, we didn't set out with this in mind. Really, it was I call it a necessity for us to open a tasting room. Where I thought it was going to be, a year previous to that, when we had the concept of opening a coffee business in Moncton, it was to fill a gap. There wasn't any specialty coffee here. There wasn't any coffee that was really pushing the boundaries of how we interpret ethical coffee. And I thought it was going to be as simple as bringing great coffee, putting the doors, putting a sign in the window, and we'd be off to the races. And we found people getting really confused why like coffee might be acidic, why it might have a fruity note to it, why it doesn't smell like tobacco or burnt. And that was really where we wanted to. I had this moment of fear in June 2020 when I was like, oh shit, like I need to find a way to actually have people slow down, take time to understand what they're tasting, and really bring them on that journey with us. And the tasting room started with it actually came about when I had 2 friends of ours to sit right at the bar with myself and my business partner Zach, and I did a very long version of probably 3 hours of us talking about coffee. And one of the ladies said, she's like, you should just do this. Like, this is the business. So we were reservation only for almost a year, where we didn't have a single like open hours, nothing. You had to book with us online, over the phone, and it gave a really controlled environment for COVID, where we could really space people differently. We could have a different approach with it, and it's really blossomed into. I'd say like arguably we're one of the industry leaders in bringing even a small community like Moncton to understanding what great coffee can be and how they can make it at home. As opposed to me hoping for your $5 every lunchtime, I'd rather give you a bag of coffee a week and teach you how to make it.
Yeah, you must have really opened up the door for a lot of people who like don't really know much about coffee, eh? Because myself, I come in here and I kind of already knew a lot about coffee, and I still learned some things. And so I'm sure you probably get a lot of people who just know nothing, and they're like, wow, like I had no idea coffee was like this.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the biggest points that always blew my mind was that people didn't know coffee's a fruit. Like, coffee is literally a fruit plant that we are taking a seed out of, roasting, grinding, and brewing. And for a long time, that was like the big wow. I remember even still when I say that in the tasting room, you'd see half the group be like, I didn't know that. That's unbelievable. Did you know that? It's a fruit? And it starts making sense why there is acidity, why there is for lack of a better word, fruity notes to a coffee.
Yeah.
It literally is a fruit.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I've done some tastings, and my team will test this all the time, where we have to switch pretty quickly. I'll be talking to somebody, and you realize that, oh shit, they know what they're talking about. Like, this is someone who also knows coffee. They're starting from point zero, and we'll quickly escalate the level of geek we can go to. You know, if you want to talk about just water extraction, let's do that. Let's focus on total dissolved solvents, and let's focus on water for an hour and a half. But it doesn't always go that way. You know, it depends who's in the room.
Yeah. So how do they discover coffee? Do you know this answer?
How they discovered it?
Yeah.
I've heard a couple like lores. There's some tales of what it is.
Let's talk about them.
Well, I think one of the main ones, and it's done. Starbucks promotes this one too, is like the dancing goats. Okay. So it's an Ethiopian farmer who saw that his goats were eating these cherries, and they would become more animated. And the story is he like sits under a tree, and these cherries fall into his glass of hot water, and they steep, and then he gets more active from there. I have trouble believing that they just sort of like saw dancing goats and wanted to eat fruit. I think there was probably a longer lineage of them breaking something down, but that's like the origin story if I understand it.
Yeah, I've heard that one too. I'm not sure if I remember hearing that they were like dancing goats, but I just heard like straight up they just saw their goats eating them, like their goats were attracted to them, and maybe they just had more energy and they were like, hey, let's try this too. I mean, a lot of things that we've actually discovered in the world that has been like just from observing animals and stuff.
Totally. I love what I think was so cool about coffee, and it goes along with my passion for music too. I'm very into history, and seeing what happened afterwards, the next 600-700 years, was for me like I did a lot of research on that, because how coffee in the Yemenis empire operated through Islam and the spread of Islam throughout the Middle East, and it's fascinating. It was really honored and honed in there, and then it didn't spread to anywhere else in the world, and then pretty much within 100 years it went everywhere. It basically broke through the Yemenis empire. They have a couple of stories that are going to India through a man named Babu Badan, or going to the coffee houses of Turkey and Europe, and then it comes to the New World in the 1700s, and it's so cool to see that. And then you can really track a lot about culture and the geopolitical stuff happening through coffee.
Yeah, and it's been like such a source of inspiration for so many different creators and businesses, like all throughout time. Like, as I remember reading from Michael Pollan's book, which we were talking about before we started, like like just how it was such an influence for a lot of different like famous composers and stuff. Like there was one, I don't know if you remember from the book, or if you even read the book, you just heard snippets, you said.
I heard snippets of it.
Yeah, so there's this one music composer, God forbid, I can't remember the name, but I guess he like just lived off coffee, and like he would just like drink like sludge, like just hot water, and like drink the grinds and everything, like morning to night. And he said it like it's what gave him his like, I don't know, creative power, I guess.
I'm trying to remember who that is, because it's on the tip of my tongue. I know exactly what you're referring to right now.
A ridiculous amount of.
There's a few other people too. Like there's a couple. I call them delightful weirdos in the classical music composition scene, where they would have like only grind like 41 beans for their coffee. I think Einstein was there actually. He like ground 41 beans for every cup of coffee he did.
Oh, really?
It was like meticulous. I love that. It's
well,
like,
yeah, and these days like the new way of doing that is just is weighing it, right?
Totally. And weight is actually like we always recommend using scales, and like this is one where we toss up. You know, we try not to be too forceful in how we sell here, because we want to help people on their journey, and not assume that everyone can afford the $5,000 coffee setup that it might actually take to brew great coffee consistently. But scales, oh my gosh, they make life easier. Yeah. Holy jumping, yeah. Because coffee beans are different sizes, they have different densities, different weights. Just knowing you need 20 grams to extract 350 or 340, that's very simple for me. Like this coffee we're drinking right now, it's a beautiful Kenyan coffee. It's a bit of a bigger varietal of coffee, like they physically are larger. And then she roasted it super light, so it has a bit more density to it. Like if we counted 41 beans, it would not be the same every time compared to a different coffee we might pull out.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so you're saying that depending on the roast, you adjust the grind size.
Oh yeah, even depending on the varietal.
Okay.
It's and also extraction method. Extraction method will generally dictate what zone I'm going into for that, and then from there it's pretty easy. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. It's a glitch in the matrix. Someone calling.
Someone else's actually. Not even my phone.
Oh really? Someone else's phone. Yeah. It's funny. They didn't have their coffee yet.
No, exactly. So it's the scale makes it a lot easier for us to figure that out, just in terms of recipe. Grind size like that. Oh my gosh, I love that question, because I have to slow myself down, because I get excited. And I'm like, how do you like coffee to taste?
Yeah.
That will also help me dictate how we're going to grind coffee for you. Yeah. Because for this method, we made a pour over a little bit earlier, and for this pour over, if you prefer more bitter coffee, more astringent coffee, well, we can do that by grinding a little bit finer, using maybe a little bit less water, maybe pouring a little bit slower. If we want maybe more tea-like, we're going to grind coarser. We're going to have more sweetness in the cup. There's all these little things. So I'll often chat with somebody about what they actually enjoy in their coffee.
Yeah.
And then from there, we'll start tracing a recipe back for them.
Yeah. Cool. And I guess like the grind size, having a consistent grind size for when you do brew coffee at home, like it makes it more consistent for the taste.
Oh, absolutely. We're extracting a plant material.
Yeah.
You know, if they're all different sizes, they're going to extract at different rates. Where this is going to be, if we're all uniform and it's beautiful in there, it's going to hopefully, in theory, extract identically. So we're not going to get inconsistencies in our cup. Yeah. Which a lot of time it's like it feels dry. Like that's the best way to put it. Like I'll get like either dry or astringent, sour, salty notes, depending on what actually comes out from an inconsistent coffee.
Okay, yeah. So a lot of it just goes down to like personal preference for that stuff. Yeah.
Oh man, there's a great coffee company in Switzerland, and their motto I love. It's the best cup of coffee. The best cup of coffee is the coffee you like. Yeah. And I think that's just perfect. Yeah. You know, because we have a coffee here that's a $400 bag of coffee. And I think it's fabulous. It's the best coffee I've ever had. And not just because the price point's there. Like, it's actually the best cup of coffee I've ever had. It might not be enjoyable for my mother. She might hate that. Even if she doesn't know the price, she might just hate that cup of coffee. Because it's like, it tastes like a fruit explosion. It's like you're eating a fruit cup in melted ice cream form.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I think sounds delightful.
Hey, that's not the same coffee that they extract from, was it monkey poop?
Oh, there's a few animal poops. I think that's... I might get in trouble for saying this, but it's a bit of a gimmick.
Yeah, yeah.
It's and I think the big issue is that the people roasting the coffee are not the best roasters in the world.
Yeah.
So even though the coffee itself might lack malic or citric acid because of a digestive tract, it's not roasted very well. So we've tried it all. We had the elephant poop. We had the Kopi Luwak, like that's like the lemurs, essentially the big cats.
Yeah.
It was kind of boring.
Yeah. So like, we can just say it, the coffee was shit.
It was shit, literally. Made from shit. It tastes like shit. Yeah, yeah. It wasn't very good. Yeah. Yeah. No, there's so many. There are some gimmicks. We had I won't call the company out, but we had a Forbes list last year. They released the most expensive coffee in the world. It was about $700 for a pound of coffee. And
wow.
I know, which is absurd. And the packaging alone was gorgeous. So we bring this coffee in, and we're so excited. We waited for Christmas time last year. Pretty much almost a year to the day we waited for it. And we crack it open. It's this gorgeous box, velour sack in the middle, little gold chain on the side. I crack open the bag. It was disgusting. Like, honestly, like I could have bought better coffee at the grocery store. Yeah. It was absolutely terrible. And so I wrote them a note. And I just said very simply, this coffee isn't edible. I'd like a refund. And I get this long essay back from them. Basically, it was a giant like F you to me. And they're like, who are you to know that what good coffee is? We've never had a complaint in 20 years of doing this. Please fill out this form and we'll get back to you. And the form was like, what's your coffee credentials? What coffee have you drank this year?
Oh, wow.
What do you think you know about coffee? So I filled it out. It took me like an hour and a half, and I filled out their essay form questions. I got no response from them because we have certifications here. We drink the best coffee in the world. We're actively searching for that, and all I got was a refund notification. It was they didn't even want to talk to me at that point. They're like, no. Oh shit, we didn't get them. You know, like, so
and the winner of Ultimate Coffee Snob of the year goes to
yeah, that's us right here.
Or well, you or them.
I think probably like them.
Them probably
selling some sooty beans around the world. Yeah, it was very interesting. No, coffee's a lot of fun, and it's and I think you said it earlier. It really brings people together. And there's been, and it's not liquor, and I'm not here to trash on booze. You know, I really enjoy wine. I enjoy spirits. But there's something different about sharing a coffee with somebody that I find is a little bit different than us having. If we're doing a podcast right now and drinking shots the whole time, after an hour, it'd be a very different podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if we're the best of friends, we're going to end up arguing and fighting and not doing that. We're coffee. We could drink coffee all day.
Yeah. Coffee just makes you, I don't know, it's like the talking drug, you know?
That's it. I love it. And it's, it's funny. Even though coffee isn't always the main vehicle of conversation, it does spur conversation. You know, and I think about like some pivotal moments that coffee for me. It's meeting my wife. We went for our first date over coffee. You know, meeting friends, the community we built here. It's maybe coffee isn't always what we're talking about, but it's what brings us together.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, coffee along with like other substances, like even like cigarettes and alcohol, but coffee is obviously the most friendly of them all. It really does bring people together. I mean, how many first dates and start from coffee that end up into marriages and kids and stuff.
Oh, exactly.
And like even just like how like people are going to study. It's like, oh, let's meet for a coffee. Like, let's go study, meet for a coffee. Business meeting, it's with a coffee. Like when you go work on like something creative or work on your business, like it's usually accompanied with a coffee.
Absolutely.
And so on and so forth. I mean,
and I think we were talking about before, like even just like exercise, working out, like what caffeine can do in this form is really cool too. One thing we talked about cold brew in the room. I'm not sure if you were part of the tasting that we used to do cold brew to start. We don't do it during the winter as much, but for half the year we feature cold brew as one of our courses. And cold brew is so interesting because it has it can be such a high caffeine content, and with pretty much it's 0 carbs, 0 sugar. And so a lot of them, even like a pre-workout or people who are getting like really on a health kick there and trying to get some energy in the gym, if you're taking, something that has taurine in it all the time compared to just a nice cold brew, different story. Like I love having a cold brew in the morning in the summertime.
Okay, so let's talk about the facts about cold brew then. So you're saying that it extracts more caffeine?
Yeah, it's caffeine comes from contact time between water and coffee.
Yeah.
Now, and it's I had someone actually this weekend was talking about, on a general rule of thumb, people will say dark roast has less caffeine. And as an overall rule, they're absolutely right. It does, because you're cooking more of the caffeine off when you're roasting it.
Okay.
Now there are, and this is something I say, there's grains of salt with everything, right? That's not always the case.
Yeah.
Because different varietals of coffee can have different caffeine. Yeah. Different styles of roasting can produce different caffeine levels in that same roast profile. And so a roast profile being like dark roast, medium roast, light roast, that kind of stuff. So it's really the big thing to extract caffeine though is that contact time. So the longer you brew coffee with water, the more caffeine will get extracted into it.
Okay.
So this is why things like espresso has less caffeine. Because even though it's so much more viscous and there's more extraction of solvents into the actual liquid, it's only 25 seconds if we're pulling a shot here of actual caffeine contact time.
Okay, that makes sense. For a second there, I thought that the cold brew might have had more caffeine because the water wasn't hot, like as if in maybe the heat took away some of the caffeine a little bit, or
actually not at all. It's because we do cold brew. It would be generally between 12 and 20 hours.
Okay, yeah. So that it's just the length of time.
It's the length of time. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and so and in cold brew, it has like less carbs and stuff in it compared to hot.
Well, no, not even compared to hot. Coffee just has.
Okay, coffee
no
in general.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I don't know if there was something else.
Coffee is like 99% water.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
It's mostly water. So it's when you think, and then you're just getting a lot of pure caffeine from that, which I think is just so cool. And I was more comparing it to like an energy drink.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Like I see my brother-in-law. He's awesome, but he'll drink like a Monster. That terrifies me. You look at the ingredient list there, it's like, oh my gosh, like that is. I'd much rather just have a cold brew and I get the same effect that he's getting from his Monster energy drink.
Yeah,
without having to chug down 200 grams of sugar and everything else.
Oh yeah, man, it's way better for you. And I mean, if you're consistently doing that, you're gonna feel better than you would chugging energy drinks all the time from, like all the fake sugar and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, coffee is like a wonder drug. You can call it medicine too. I mean, honestly, when used appropriately and not in excess, drinking like 7, 10, 12, 20 sludge coffees like that old composer back in the day used to do. But yeah, I know. I mean, like you drink it on like black coffee in the morning. That promotes autophagy. Your body's way of like healing and repairing and recycling itself. Where you replace all the old cells with new ones and fill with antioxidants and. It just gets you going in the morning to like push through a workout. Oh,
you're totally right. It's also a little bit of an appetite suppressor.
Yeah.
And as you know very well, like fasting is a great thing for you. If the longer you can, like if you have intermittent fasting in the morning, you're going to be like nice and healthy. Like that's a really good thing for purging your body and cleaning out that way. Coffee can really help promote that.
Oh yeah.
Which is so great. It's plus it's delicious. Like let's be honest too. It's also
delicious.
good.
Yeah. It's just awesome. Yeah. No, I always use coffee as a catalyst for like fasting, and it makes it way easier, and it also just like enhances the benefits of fasting itself. So it's kind of interesting.
How do you make your coffee, man?
How do I make mine? That's a good question, man. See, like I love making it all different ways, and that's why I appreciate coming for the coffee testing, because each way you brew it just provides like a different taste, and it's like a different experience. So, you start off back in the day like just drinking Tim Hortons crap, and then you go on, and then you have Keurigs, and then you have Starbucks, and then it starts to go a little bit uphill from there, and then you're like, okay, how can I take this next level? Then French press is what changed my life.
Totally.
Started having French press, I was like, holy, and then grinding the beans fresh, which increases like, you're not going to lose as much oils from the coffee. Like when you grind them right away, you're gonna get all those beneficial oils and polyphenols like in your coffee compared to like if you're buying like pre-grinds.
Oh yeah, and even in terms of freshness, staleness, wherever people often ask like, is this coffee good by when? Like coffee's not gonna rot. Like it's not gonna it's not gonna grow mold like a piece of food that you would have.
Yeah.
But as you said, it goes stale so quick. As soon as you grind that coffee, like I said, the timer's starting. You're gonna have 48 hours. The coffee's gonna taste the same, and then it's gonna go right downhill.
Yeah, some people might not care about that, but I do.
Yeah, me too. It's funny. We find, especially in our community here, that I meet somebody that are like really into craft beer. I'm like, you're probably gonna be into coffee too. I meet someone they're into wine. They're into, it could be anything. You're into music. If you're a passionate person, coffee's for you. Like, because like and that's what I often say we do here. We share passion. You know? It's just coffee happens to be the vehicle we've chosen right now, and that's what we're plowing ahead on, and we love it. But man, we could apply what we do here to anything.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Passion is where life exists, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, man. And I mean, like I said before the podcast, I mean, caffeine and coffee just like totally fits a jazz musician as yourself.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a musician. I'm not a jazz musician, but man, jazz and caffeine, you kind of just naturally associate the two.
Oh, you're up late in a smoky bar, so you gotta be drinking there. You can't.
Yeah, that's right. Just jumping around on your instrument and stuff.
Oh man, and it's funny. You know, I did my education in jazz, but man, I'm back to the world of classical music, and coffee works great there too. It's really music in general. Coffee go hand in hand. You know, it's I was saying this to you before. It's really that the fact that we can still do what we want in the evenings. I can still have lots of time to practice. I can still perform. I can still be there. And then in the morning, I get up here and you're here at 7 a.m. doing your coffee stuff. It's great. Do you drink coffee late at night? As a random question for you.
I don't. I used to. You know, I drink decaf at night.
Yeah, decaf's great.
Yeah, I do drink decaf when it gets past, you know, the afternoon, and I still just want to have that like coffee experience without getting a lot of caffeine.
So it's funny. A lot of people don't like decaf. They have like there's this terrible like hashtag going around that's like death before decaf and all this kind of shit that's there, and I think it's totally wrong. Yeah. It's a wrong attitude, and one thing I'm really adamant about my business is we don't want to alienate anybody. And there's a lot of reasons why you can't have caffeine. It can be medical, it can be otherwise. And I understand where it comes from this idea decaf's bad, because for a long time they were using chemicals to create the decaffeination process. Or they would be rinsing it with, let's say, like I know how they make a lot of decaf teas would be like essentially activating it with warm water, activating the caffeine molecule, stripping it off, and then rinsing it again. So you're getting a weaker version of whatever was there. But this company called Swiss Water they're basically making a molecular change of the green coffee. Like I would say green coffee is when you refer to like an unroasted coffee.
Okay, yeah.
So when they're using a green coffee, they're molecularly, I can't remember how they do it. They have a patent over what they do, but they remove the caffeine molecule. So you're getting all the great flavors, all the oils, everything you want from your coffee, just doesn't have caffeine.
Yeah.
And it's cool. They're 99.9% decaffeinated. They can't find the caffeine, but they also can't prove that it's not there. Okay. That's why it's 99.9. So we have it's funny. This started at the very beginning of Epoch, where we had some customers saying that they're like, well, who's pursuing the best decaf in the world? And I was like, that's a great question. I don't think anyone is. Well, I want to. Yeah. So I have 7 decafs on my shelf from 7 different roasters.
Oh, you do?
Oh my gosh, I have an incredible one right now from our friends in Las Vegas. Like it's Luminous Coffee. Like their decaf absolutely slaps. Oh my gosh.
So I never liked decaf until I tried Kicking Horse's decaf, because I do like a dark roast.
Yeah.
And I found when I had Kicking Horse's decaf that it still gave me that like normal coffee experience. It still felt like I was drinking regular coffee.
So why do you like? And I mean this. I say this all the time. Where I never mean judgment when I ask this. Why do you like dark roast?
Why do I like dark roast? Because I like the dark, pungent, bitter flavor, and that's not too acidic. For sure.
And acidity, and more you roast, you're gonna get rid of that acidity. It's darker coffee will have less acidity.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny because we actually, I don't know if you know this, we have no dark roast here.
Oh really?
Yeah, because I can get that same bitterness, that same pungency without burning the coffee. Because there are a lot of other chemicals that get created when you hit that second crack. So sorry, I'll back up a second there. So when you're roasting coffee, there's quite a few chemical reactions that take place, and there's different ways that you break up the roasting process. The first the way that you know the coffee is, let's say, at its very minimum light roast, ready to go, is what we call first crack.
Yeah.
And essentially, it happens after, I'm going to improperly use this term, but essentially a Maillard reaction takes place of the sugars and stuff in the coffee, and there's an expansion and an explosion that takes place, and the coffee will erupt, and literally it loses about 15% of its weight. It will double in size, and that's the first crack. That's where light roast coffee is generally right before or at first crack.
Okay.
From there, any second after that first crack is called the development time. That's where a lot of the flavors in the coffee will get preserved or changed. You keep going from there, and a second chemical reaction takes place. That's called the second crack. And I say crack because it literally sounds like popcorn. Like you hear it in the roaster, it's like popping and cracking. That second crack, this is where like all these like negative kind of things will take place, and a lot of oils get produced. So you see these waxy coffee beans; those are actually not super good for you. Okay. It's not going to be as harmful as smoking a cigarette. It's not on that level.
Waxy is the ones with like the oil. You can see the oil on the outside.
Big time. And for me, I wanted to, when I started this business, I wanted to get away from that myself.
Okay.
And like I said, I can get the exact flavor you're looking for without going that distance.
Okay.
And I always put it back to like chicken. You know what I mean? Like why was dark roast invented? There's a historical reason and a practical reason. The practical reason is that it's easier to extract in water. Okay. It's more water soluble. It's hollow. It's burnt.
Yeah.
Also, burnt things taste the same. You know, if I have chicken from 10 different local farms here and I burn all of them, they're all going to taste like burnt chicken. You know, but if I cook them all beautifully and have a different spice and a seasoning on them, they're going to taste differently.
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of what we wanted to show here, was that we could get exactly what you're looking for without having to go that level of burning it.
That's cool. I like how we're having this conversation, because I didn't even know that. I did know that dark roast has less antioxidants and stuff, and it was like a little bit worse for you because you're essentially burning it. And you know, I cook with a little bit of water when I cook meat or eggs because I avoid those carcinogens. So I mean, I'm all about like optimizing anything I can. So that's very valuable. I'd like to take you up on that test and just see if your roast can match to the flavor I'm looking for that dark
100%
dark feeling, you know.
And even how we source coffee, like I'll look for certain terroirs, like and I always explain that terroir is like what does a region taste like, what does an origin taste like in terms of coffee. Okay. Because there are very different tastes when you travel around the world.
Yeah, totally.
And different styles of processing coffee, drying coffee, that will give a different result in your cup. And generally, when someone comes in and they tell me, hey, I like bitter, strong coffee, I'm like, well, we're going to be looking at Brazil, Nicaragua, parts of Guatemala, even certain places in Colombia that do coffee. We're not going to go to like a really beautiful, high elevation Ethiopian coffee. Yeah. I'm going to terrify you with some acidity. If we go to Kenya, you're pretty much always getting acidic coffee. That's how they preserve and wash their coffees and stuff. So there can be like a good rule of thumb where you go to a shelf like ours and we have, 45 different bags of coffee. It's like, oh crap, what do I buy? It's like, that's where our team is trained to help you be like, hey, we're going to find a really nice hearty medium Brazilian low elevation coffee, maybe an Indonesian Sumatra coffee we're going to pull out. And you're not going to notice any difference, except that you're going to feel a little bit better in your tummy from having a lack of oil there. Wow, that's pretty cool, man. Yeah. What was I going to ask with that? Oh, so yeah, that goes to be back from what you were saying at the beginning, is like the ethical part of coffee. Mm-hmm. So what can you tell me about that? Because I think, there's a lot of these different brands that say they're ethical, but I'm sure not all of them are. And so when you source your beans, like what do you guys look for, and what do you consider ethical? So it's about the level of transparency, right? So what we can actually see, because I can pay a cooperative in Colombia a lot of money, and they don't pay any of their workers at all, let's say. Yeah. So they're making lots of money where we have a fair trade stamp on there, but it's not actually getting back to the people who are doing the work on the coffee farms. Okay. So for us, we're looking for transparent partners that can provide the information we actually want. So we have a few partners in Canada we've worked with. We have a few importers in the States that we work with, and a few farms we've directly actually sourced from as well. And it's challenging. I have to be careful what I say, because I don't want to trash like the idea of just what fair trade is, but fair trade is not fair anymore. And the real reason is there's no value for inflation. Where when fair trade was started in the 1970s, became a stamp in 1991, and farmers had to pay for this. So it is quite expensive for cooperatives to go out and get a fair trade stamp on their coffee, or an organic certified. This is kind of a cash grab for a lot of these businesses. Okay. And so fair trade, when it started, was $1 US. It pretty much has not changed in 30, 40, 50 years. So just by inflation standards, we should be closer to $3 or $4 American. I know the prices, by the way, they're in USD. I'm not talking Canadian prices. Okay. Like you buy coffee in USD, so it's where it is. So I'll tell you right now, very transparently, we share all of our prices with our customers. Our cheapest coffee right now is $4.50 for a pound. So that's US. So we are spending a lot of money to make sure that we can have the right relationships and purchasing the right people. So that's where a lot of, when I say ethical coffee, I look at, I can buy fair trade coffee for $1 US. That has been proven that to be unethically sourced. Okay. You cannot make money. A farmer cannot make money. A picker cannot make money at $1 US a pound coming to me. Yeah. It has to be more. I think it was a great article in Standard Magazine, which is a wonderful publication. And I think they said it was like $3.50 was like when you can start actually having like ethical coffee. And coffee, by the way, is, since last year, This like I got a report this last year from a couple of my importers, and it is double the price right now for coffee, because it is the shipping logistics of COVID. All the relationships in shipping have been capped. So people, it's not going to be like, you're not going to notice a difference day to day, but coffee needs to be more expensive. This race we did in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s to the dollar cup, that just destroyed a beautiful industry. It has been so taken advantage of. This idea of the quick, put my thing in the Keurig machine and go. That needs to be a thing of the past, in my opinion. Totally. Otherwise, coffee is at a point of, it's going to be extinct. 10, 15 years, we're not going to have coffee.
Yeah, I think that quick convenience of anything in life, like similar to that, needs to be extinct, you know?
Big time.
It causes more harm than good.
We have a motto here. Our motto is in praise of slow. And I often joke that it's not our service is not slow, but the care we take when we enjoy something that has been really labored over, like coffee. You'll have 25 people touch your coffee before it reaches Canada. That's insane to me. And then I'm going to charge $1 a pound? How does that make any sense? Yeah, mathematically, it's not possible. We can't live off that. And then when you factor in global warming, you factor in the changing world of like even like the drug economics, where like East Africa has got totally screwed recently because the war in the Middle East has made all the drugs from Afghanistan go through. Heroin's now rampant in Kenya, Uganda, all these places, and where they didn't have that before, where we dealt with it in the 1920s, they're dealing with it right now. Oh, and on top of that, industrialization. Like, why would I go work on a coffee farm and have it be either robbed, have a global warming affect my crops, have a turd like me in Canada paying $1 a coffee, you know, when in the reality I can go work in a factory and make a living that can support my family. So we have to change pretty quickly how we're going to be approaching coffee and enjoying coffee, or we're not going to have it. Like my son, you know, he's only a year and a half. He's going to grow up in a world that doesn't have coffee when he's ready to drink it. You know, it's I don't mean to just sort doom and gloom, but this is the actual reality of this industry right now.
And that's probably the same with like cacao and.
You nailed that,
man. Just other industries like similar to that.
I often say that the only other industry that maybe is more taken advantage of than coffee is chocolate. Yeah. It's the cheap chocolates, right? It's that style.
And so as far as like the organic certification, is that sort of similar in the way with like fair trade? Like if you're buying organic, like is it really organic, or are they just?
No. So if they have certified organic, I would assume they're organic.
Okay.
There are tens of thousands of farms that are organic that can't afford the certification.
Yeah, that's what I was going towards.
I had a person in last week who they weren't like arguing with me, but they kept asking them, "Are you sure this coffee's organic?" And I can pull up where we source the coffee from, they had a drone fly over it. Like, you can see their agricultural practices.
Yeah.
But it's a cooperative. So what that means is there's 1,500 small farmers who grow other products as well in Ethiopia, who actually come to one place. They're not going to be able to certify each of those farms.
Oh, yeah.
The reality is that is organic farming. They just can't afford that. And so you see this like organic farm, the rainforest certified, all this kind of stuff is generally from richer producers, and they're normally in Latin America because they can afford to have the infrastructure to do things like that. Where you're not, we sourced coffee actually last year from the first registered organic farm in Ethiopia. They haven't changed anything for 50 years. They just could afford it finally. Yeah, that was the only thing.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I kind of knew that already, but I liked your elaboration on that. Mm-hmm. It makes things more clear. That makes a lot of sense. So as far as like caffeine itself, I mean, have you heard about like combining lion's mane and caffeine?
I have not as much.
Oh, really?
No.
So lion's mane is a mushroom,
of course, yeah.
You already know, and you know the medicinal mushroom is becoming like honestly pretty trendy these days, and like just as awareness and research increases on it, and people are noticing the effects and benefits. And lion's mane is one that affects us neurologically in the brain, so it literally helps neurogenesis and just create new synapses in the brain, which is like good for learning, and it just like, helps you to just be more cognitively aware and so on and so forth. So as you know yourself, like caffeine is already a drug that improves cognitive function.
Big time.
So when you pair that with lion's mane, it has like a synergistic effect. And people are even taking it a step further and doing microdoses of psilocybin on top of that to further increase the effects of that, of the the neurological benefits from caffeine and lion's mane.
That's incredible. I have goosebumps right now. That's amazing, because even the effect that it can have on PTSD. Like after listening to me talk, I talk very fast. Like I'm obviously a neurodiverse person myself, you know, where I've struggled with ADHD my entire life, you know, and psilocybin and the mushroom, I'm so excited that it's getting the time it deserves, especially the microdosing that's happening there. This is not your typical 1970s guy taking a quarter ounce of mushrooms and tripping out. This is actually being done medically now, which I think is so amazing. And I have not heard much about this though. I have to do some research because this is it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. This pairing of these two things would be
for sure, man. I mean, I'm not like condoning the use of like illegal psychedelic drugs or stuff, but I would say that like psilocybin has a lot of research done on it, and if taken in like microdoses, it's been proven to be effective. I mean, right now it's being studied like even in Canada just for therapeutic use in a medical setting.
Oh, I think it's been very successful too.
Absolutely,
and I'm a huge supporter of that.
Yeah, quite honestly, like for those listening, I mean, some may already know, but I've lost 115 pounds and just changed my life. I had a bunch of mental health problems, a bunch of physical health problems, and part of my journey of recovering and healing of all those problems was using microdose of psilocybin.
Wow.
So yeah, I didn't want to make this about that, but I mean, I just wanted to say that like some people have been combining it with coffee and lion's mane, just a little bit of psilocybin and lion's mane, because if you ever listen to Paul Stamets talk, he's like fascinating. He talks all about this stuff. Like Paul Stamets is like a world-renowned mycologist, and he's been on a couple of Joe Rogan episodes, which is where pretty much most people have heard of him.
Right.
But he talks on his second episode with Joe Rogan. He talks about combining lion's mane, caffeine. Maybe he doesn't mention caffeine. Maybe other people do. And just microdose of psilocybin and niacin, because the psilocybin has neurogenesis effects on the brain, and so does the lion's mane. And so when you take those two together, it enhances those effects. And something something synergistically happens to them. And when you take the niacin, it takes those neurological effects that you have in the brain, and Paul was saying that it just like spreads them all throughout the body. So you'll start to like, I don't know, I guess have neurological improvements and like healing in like your legs and the nervous system all throughout your body rather than just the brain. And
That's
so
freaking cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff. Yeah,
I'm so glad we're at a point in our civilization that we can start looking at this stuff.
Yeah,
because I'm still with these negative taboos on it. They've done nothing but hurt the people who want to use, the people who haven't had a chance to use. Yeah. Even I remember seeing a great Drugs Incorporated thing way back when they're talking about the headaches, those like crazy headaches people get, and then they found that the mushrooms like lion's mane, I think was specifically the one, could help solve people who had like chronic migraines.
Oh yeah,
it's so fascinating.
I've heard the same thing with psilocybin too, so I'm not surprised that lion's mane would help as well too. It's almost like lion's mane just like very subtly helps the brain.
So are you familiar with, there's a very famous brand from Norway. I think they're in Norway, or they're in Scandinavia for sure. It's called Four Sigmatic.
Yeah.
So they're
a big one.
They're doing like chaga, which is like of course full of antioxidants. So they're doing like a certain type of mushroom, which we are very plentiful of in New Brunswick actually, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And they're doing that and some other types of mushrooms with caffeine and coffee. And have you tried that stuff before?
Oh, absolutely, man. Like I actually, funny enough, I started working for a chaga and hemp company.
No way. Okay.
Yeah. Just recently, it's called Canoom Naturals, and he's starting up the company. So I'm helping him out with it. I mean, I've used chaga, I've used lion's mane, reishi, turkey tail, maitake, cordyceps, like you name it. Like I've used and researched all of them, and they all have their own little thing that they do. And they're all awesome
because they're pairing coffee with chaga,
yes,
which I think is so cool. Because and also my only criticism once again is that they're often selling pre-ground coffee, which at a certain point I'm like, okay, why not just use great coffee? Like, is there a way for us to like do our own version of this? You know what I mean?
There is.
Yeah,
I think there is too. Actually, from his company startup, they're kind of like selling their just ground chaga with coffee from down east.
Okay.
And they're selling it as like a cold brew thing.
Right. So you infuse it right from there.
Yeah. So you make the chaga, like you brew the chaga tea, like just chaga and hot water extraction, and then you use that water to do the cold brew extraction for the coffee. Interesting. So, and I've tried actually making like French press with the chaga extract, like hot water extract, and it ends up making like this very different tasting coffee, because chaga doesn't have much of a flavor, but it does have like a little bit
for
of
sure.
flavor.
And if you get a really potent chaga, it can almost be a bit like just a bit like dirt sometimes. You know what I mean? Not in a negative way. It's not a negative for me because I actually love it.
Not a bad dirt.
Not a bad dirt. It's
the
finest dirt in all the land. Yeah. But it can have this kind of like dirty taste to it. Yeah. And that's why I think that when I look at stuff like that in the market, I understand why they're using a darker roast coffee for this stuff.
All right, you saw this coming. If you want 15% off chaga mushroom tea, tincture, or CBD hemp capsules, use the code BEST15 at checkout using the link in the show description.
Because I'm curious, your dark roast over. How was this coffee we had right now?
It was good, man. It's very
different,
flavorful. And like you said, so I don't know if the listener knows this, but when you are drinking coffee, I learned this at your tasting thing. As it cools down, the flavor changes.
Big time.
Yeah.
That is so much fun. There's actually there's some great companies now, including this one that we're drinking from right now. That I'll give them a shout out. Luna Coffee is phenomenal. Laura and Nate and Langley, BC are probably our favorite roasters in Canada.
Oh, cool.
And they are a small team, and they're absolutely crushing it. And on this bag, I was reading just when I was opening it up there, they said they gave 2 flavoring notes. One of like the hot beverage, one of the cold beverage. And it is wildly different. So when we talk about when we're cupping and tasting coffees, we will often have different tasting notes we write down for different points in the beverage. So like what it tastes like when it's cool is this might be like a bit more grapefruity, maybe a little bit more blackberry. So those are like really high acidic cherries and fruits. Where to start, it might be a bit more of the honey, a bit more molasses. It might have. It's really the characters can change wildly. Even like where you taste them in your palate when it cools down is also different, which I think is so much fun.
Yeah.
You can actually. I wouldn't recommend buying this because it's a new technology, but there's these servers now you can buy that will, when you serve at the table, they will have like a temperature reading on the glass. So they'll say like, oh, your cup is 86 degrees.
Oh,
and
no
then,
way.
And then the place they do it, they'll actually provide tasting notes at like 86 degrees, taste your cup. You'll taste like mango and papaya. And at like 75 degrees, it's going to taste like blueberries and more acidic. That is super cool.
That's next level. Are you guys going to do that here at some point?
I believe in the full sensory experience. I really do. Like, when we, even if you come for just an open hours, we've been doing this now where you buy an espresso from us, we're going to give you a little sniffer of the espresso as well. You're going to have something that pairs with it. You're going to get the tasting notes. Like, we really try and go to that next level. Even, we're trying to find like something even more tactile you can play with too, to even have, like we often use, it's not as tactile, but we use like books and stuff here as like our kind of like feature to engage our senses. But it's, there's so much we can do.
Yeah.
And music too, man. It's people don't realize it, but we carefully talk about what music we play in the tasting room. Because that actually plays a lot into what vibe we're feeling and what we want to convey to our customers, and it's something that I'm very passionate about thinking about constantly. Like it's funny, we have no music on right now, and it's like I'm sure both of us, you and I, we have music playing in our brains.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I have my background soundtrack that's going right now
to
this vibe session. So it's there's a great book. You ever read Biology? It's like BUYology.
No.
So this guy is absolutely fascinating. He's worked with some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies in the world, and it's biology essentially is like the biology of purchasing and interacting with businesses. And I got a lot of inspiration from that. My business partner passed me that book, and they talked about like what music, what smells, what feeling you have when you walk into Epoch chemistry, as an example that we use obviously for ourselves. And that's something we heard. Even yesterday we had a pop-up here, and we had a gentleman making waffles, and he's like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but the vibe here is like people come in, they have a different headspace when they walk in here. And it's something we have deliberately cultivated that. The fact that we have no Wi-Fi accessibility, the fact that how we choose the menu, even how I train my staff for customer service. Like, I am very much looking for you to take you out of the norm, off a busy street, and have you a moment where we can connect together. Even if our connection's 30 seconds, half an hour, 2 hours, doesn't matter. It should still be meaningful and focused in that moment.
Yeah, I think that's important because I think a lot of people associate coffee with just like being in a rush and having to do things. So
that's why we're not open before noon.
Yeah.
And then we get a lot of crap from that. A lot of customers tell me, they're like, oh, I can't come here in the morning. I can't get my coffee at 7 in the morning. It's like, we're actually, like, if you want coffee at 7 in the morning, I'm going to train you how to make it at 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
Because, that's when you should wake up, have an extra 5 minutes for yourself at home, maybe do some journaling yourself, maybe just sit in silence, whatever your routine asks for in that time.
Yeah.
And you brought up Keurig earlier, and I feel like this is it's something that I like to put reference to, where Keurig, sure, it takes, 25 seconds to make a Keurig pod. That comes out so freaking hot that you cannot drink that for 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
This pour over, that took me 2 minutes, 25 seconds to make.
Yeah.
And we drank immediately. And we have a great cup of coffee. And I enjoyed the process.
Oh, yeah.
I have people roll their eyes at me. They're like, I have 2 kids at home. How can I do this? Well, I have kids. My son's on my arm when I'm making a coffee in the morning. My wife and I are getting breakfast ready. We'll change off mid pour over. She'll do the first couple pours, run in the kitchen. I'll walk over, take over. Like, it's part of our routine. It's part of who we are now. And I love that. I live for that. Those are the moments that life exists.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's about the experience of it. You know, it's not just like the act of doing. Like, it's about the whole process of doing it and stuff, and who you share it with. Oh,
absolutely. And I care more then. Even though it's only 4 minutes in the morning and then I'm running out and I'm still just as late as I always was. You know, I'm perpetually late. It's something that I need that moment. That to me is peace. That's where peace exists.
Oh, absolutely, man. Coffee's like, as I heard someone else describe it before, it's like their, 10, 15, 20-minute vacation in the mornings. And it certainly is for me. Like, I look forward to my coffee every morning. It's just like, you ground yourself, you like organize your day in your mind, and then you just like get going and start doing.
I've had countless customers tell me they wake up 10 minutes earlier now just to have the process of making their coffee.
That's awesome.
And I well, you know this. You've been through a lot of transformations yourself. Those little moments of reflection in the morning that you can grab for yourself, even if you're the busiest person in the world, this is where real health can start taking place.
Oh yeah.
Like it's all my mental health issues I've ever had have come from when I'm too busy in the mornings.
Yeah.
Where I don't prioritize myself. I don't prioritize the routine I need. And this is even as someone who has crippling ADHD like myself, this is essential. Like my life changed when I was able to wake up and take 5 minutes.
Absolutely, yeah. It makes sense, like, to slow down with coffee, and it probably like affects the way you metabolize it more, because in the same way, like when we're eating in a rush, in a stressed out state with food, like so if we're grabbing a snack or smoothie or even just like standing over the counter eating really quick before we have to work, like our body is in like a state of stress and fight or flight in that moment. So we're not going to digest that food and extract those nutrients efficiently. So it would make sense that we wouldn't like metabolize the coffee.
Oh man, that's
as well.
I think you're spot on. That just blew my mind a little bit there, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
you're not going to actually get the stuff that the benefit you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably when you'll end up with like more of a crash from the caffeine and stuff, which honestly half the crashes from caffeine are probably if you put sugar in it. And
big time. And people don't realize even how caffeine interacts with our blood stream. You know what I mean? Like what is caffeine? Caffeine blocks the receptors that make us feel tired, essentially.
The adenosine receptors.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I saw a great. I'm doing it with my hands right now. You can't see obviously, but it's they're like look little C's, and it comes in and blocks that. And when they get removed all at once, that's when you feel really tired and lethargic, right?
Yeah.
That's why we always recommend the tasting room. Like, we're going to give you a lot of coffee. People since it's not liquor, I'll be honest, they would overdo it a little bit. When we first started the tasting room, we've really changed a lot of what we did, because I was getting way too much coffee. It used to be like 5 full courses. We're like two double shots plus like a liter of coffee in like an hour.
Oh wow!
People were just not feeling super well, And so we went back on reflection, and we actually I can tell you exactly how many like milliliters you're gonna have when you're here, and it does seem like a lot because we're having so many different beverages, but you're pretty much having a cup of coffee and like a double shot of espresso.
Okay.
Over an hour of education. Okay. Right, but it takes that's been a lot of reflection for us, because that was one that we didn't want people to feel sick either, and then potassium is a game changer. Like when you start adding bananas or coconut water, potatoes, whatever is after you've had coffee, you can really negate that crash you might get.
So yeah, because you were saying that like potassium helps with the jitters you might get from
big time.
From
I only learned that because I was cupping with a gentleman in Halifax. Cupping, by the way, is like a traditional coffee tasting and profiling of coffee, and he's eating bananas like every cup, and I'm like, meanwhile I'm 18 coffees in, and I'm like, what are you doing? As I'm shaking myself away, and he's like, eat bananas. Like it's gonna game change how you're doing.
Hey, fun fact: there's a little bit more potassium in avocados than there is than bananas.
I freaking love avocados.
For all you keto people.
Oh, that's fantastic. I had avocados today at lunch. That's great.
Yeah.
It's so and potassium. I was doing it with tasting one time, and I had a few doctors in the room, and one of them laughs and it's like, that's what we give seizure patients.
Oh, really?
They'll give them I want to say victims, seizure patients is potassium. Helps shaking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately that's a whole other podcast with somebody else who's an expert on minerals, but minerals are very important to our body, and caffeine does like deplete us in minerals a little bit, so it's good to replenish those.
Absolutely.
Through like just getting your adequate nutrition.
And even like even the water composition we brew with, that will change depending on what kind of coffee I want to do, what am I doing with that, how I want to ingest that stuff afterwards. Because if I'm using like really calcium rich water, my coffee's not going to dissolve the same. I'm not going to get the same result of like my actual like digesting of the coffee.
Yeah.
Metabolizing, excuse me. Yeah.
Do you test your water?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Every day.
Okay, so you wouldn't recommend people brewing with tap water at home?
Oh, depends where you are in the world.
Depends where you are, I guess.
Yeah, Moncton's not bad.
Moncton's not too bad.
Yeah.
Very chlorine-y.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And if you have a filter at home, that's great. You don't want water that's too soft or too hard.
Yeah.
You want to, there's like a sweet spot, especially for like espresso.
Yeah.
That's one thing that we used to do. We don't do it as much anymore. We used to do like a questionnaire for every person at the tasting room. And one thing that shocked me was that most people drink espresso at home. So they're all drinking Americanos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like there's very rarely anyone who's drinking like a shot of espresso.
Like a real espresso.
But it blows my mind. I'm like, that is the most complicated way to make coffee.
Really?
That's the hardest way to be consistent.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the water is so important
Yeah.
for espresso.
Yeah, I always go for like spring water. I actually go collect my own spring water.
Nice.
It helps me connect more with like the water I'm drinking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been doing that for a while and I enjoy it. But I actually just bought myself a cheap espresso machine.
What'd you get?
DeLonghi.
Nice. Okay.
Just like a little counter one.
Sweet.
It works pretty good, honestly. Like for a home.
And you have a
espresso
grinder
machine.
too, right?
I do have a grinder.
See that's your.
They don't do the full on espresso grinds, but it's good enough for me to have good coffee in the morning.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, it's still good. I mean, it's all about like your preference, right?
That's it, right?
But I honestly like I always tried like when I make French press, for instance, I always play with the grind size and like the time of extraction because I do like having different flavors from the same.
Well, and as you said earlier, that's what we do here.
Yeah.
Right. I love when people come in, and I'll be honest, it's very typically like men, where I come in like, what kind of coffee do you like? And they're like strong coffee.
Yeah.
Okay, that's super helpful because every coffee can be strong, every coffee can be weak.
Yeah.
You know, depending if I brew the same coffee, super hot water, very finely ground in a French press, we would get none of the acids would be there. It would taste like a burnt, tobacco-y, like really messed up coffee. Even though this coffee is like fruity and lovely, because I just like over extracted it, used way too much coffee, ground way too finely with way too hot water.
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't recognize it for the same coffee.
Oh man.
But it'll be nice and strong.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I love that too. So really, we try and say like leave your preconceived notions at the door. Like we want to try and break down and have you really enjoy something that you really want. Like people, a lot of time dark roast, historically our region is dark roast centric because coffee when it was first shipped around the world, it would mold. They didn't know how to store it properly. It'd be at sea for up to a year at a time. This stuff would have massive humidity fluctuations. It would mold the coffee. If you gave me a light roasted coffee that's been molded, I'm going to be sick. It's not going to make me feel very good.
Yeah.
Where if I have to burn it, you're going to burn all the bacteria off it. You're going to burn all the bad stuff that happened in the fermentation process.
Yeah.
So our region, so coffee first landed in the New World in Boston in I think it was like the 1730s.
Yeah.
Where the first coffee houses in America. We would get very old coffee up to this part of the world. So they had to burn it. That was like the tradition. And also when the coffee was taken out of, slave vessels or anything stolen from plantations and brought over into from Africa to Europe, that's where the French roast, Vienna roast, all these like Italian roast styles, they're burning shitty old coffee.
Ah, cool.
Because that's what makes it taste normal and consistent.
Oh, wow.
And also with espresso, you want dark roaster is better. Like people ask me all the time, what's the difference between espresso roast and a filter roast? Same bag of coffee. Let's say like Monogram Coffee does this all the time, where they'll have the same coffee, filter roast, espresso roast.
Yeah.
Well, the espresso roast is developed slightly quicker. It's a little bit darker. The reason is it's more water soluble. So when I grind it, pressurize it, it's going to extract more evenly for the home brewer.
Okay.
As a theory.
That's
right?
cool.
So when we take a really light roasted coffee like this one here, I'm going to have to really tinker around with my grinder to find the right setting to create the right pressure to extract a good cup of coffee.
Oh, that's cool, man. And I remember you saying there's like a little hack that you can do to home espresso machines. To,
Big
make them
time.
better. What?
Yeah, well, especially so there's a whole range. DeLonghi's one of them. Breville's the main culprit. Where there's a certain levels of Breville's that were designed, and they're not really advertised this way, but that's what they are when you read the fine print. They're for like pre-ground store-bought coffee.
Okay.
So it's like, and when you look at espresso in the store, it's like very coarse. Very coarse what they actually provide. So they have a pressurized portafilter. Essentially, portafilters are what attaches to the espresso machine. A little handle thing you see your barista use. Has a little thing on it where you put your coffee in, you tamp it down from there. That's the portafilter.
Okay.
The ones we have here, we use bottomless ones here. There's nothing pushing back on the bottom. The pressure all comes from the machine in the group head, which is like where the water gets pulled from the boiler to the group head. It gets condensed into the coffee.
Yeah.
So there's nothing pushing back. These ones are like sealed at the bottom. It's like almost picture like a squeezed ketchup bottle. It's like closed off there.
Yeah.
So pressure builds from both sides. And what happens is you get like a fake espresso essentially. Okay. So it's great on coarse coffee because coarse coffee will like when you're doing that, it will provide extra pressure that you can actually have to do that with. So it's so what we do is I have a few machines that we've bought different portafilters, we bought different pumps for them. We've like stripped back the group heads and put different things on. You can put PID readers to understand what pressure you're dealing with and how to increase it. So like it's funny, after I take a $150 machine, $300 later, I have a machine that I want to use, you know. So I have a few buddies who've done that in town. It's great. They actually turned out to be pretty good machines.
Well, that's crazy. I should almost bring my machine here. We could do like a video on it to teach people how to do it.
It's pretty tricky, but it's not too bad. Yeah. And you spend a little money here and there, and you can find some great little parts to upgrade your machine.
That's cool.
Otherwise, you're just getting like dirty water, is what I call it.
Yeah.
Zolongi's not as bad. I'll be honest. It's really there's like a certain model of Breville.
Okay.
That's what it's for. The Cafe Roma.
Okay, cool.
One,
okay, I think I got a DeLonghi.
Yeah, Zolongi should be pretty good. Yeah. And they often give you 2 portafilters. One will be pressurized, one will not be pressurized.
Yeah.
And that's you just pick which one you want there and go from there.
Yeah, it makes pretty decent coffee. So back to the mold thing. So is Dave Asprey just messing with us with the mold thing?
What elaborate a bit more. What you mean?
Okay, so
I know what Dave Asprey is. Yeah.
Dave Asprey, he sells Bulletproof Coffee.
Of course, yeah.
So one of his like selling points is that his coffee is tested for mycotoxins and mold. So that you're getting like when you're buying his coffee, you're getting like no mold in your coffee. Whereas compared to like the commercial brands, apparently they're more contaminated with mycotoxins because they're just like stored improperly and longer, just because they're so mass produced. And so on and so forth.
I think he's probably spot on with that. Now that being said, none of the coffees we buy have mold in them.
Yeah.
Ever. Like we buy very fresh coffee. Mm-hmm. So it's funny. There's like a few different lifespans and understanding lifespans of coffees, right? Like when we're buying green coffee. So first off, we the building we're in Moncton is beautiful. This is like built in 1904. It was an old grocery store.
Yeah.
So the basement is actually quite large ceilings, and that's where they store the food. So it's quite cold down there. It's not damp. It is damp for a couple months in the springtime, and we move the coffee upstairs.
Okay.
So right now it's like nice and cold. It's really temperate. Actually, when I first started my coffee adventure, I went to visit an amazing coffee company in Calgary called Phil and Sebastian. They actually will flash freeze green coffee when it arrives in Canada. That is a game changer. Like flash freezing green coffee, like wow, that's really cool. They're stopping the lifespan of that coffee so they can use it further.
Cool.
The other companies, like when you're seeing, and I won't trash any like local companies, even though this is a practice a lot of them use, where they will, there's a reason they're blending coffee. Let's put it that way. Because they're grabbing old coffee they're buying cheaply from a lot of places. Now, I don't want to shit on it because this actually can be a very good thing for importers, for producers in the coffee industry, because if you have a specialty coffee importer, let's say, and they weren't able to sell all their coffee off that year, well, they're stuck with it now. They already paid the producer. Producer got paid. Now they're sitting with a bunch of inventory they can't sell. Well, they'll often sell it off a bit cheaper as it gets a lot older, and then coffee companies will grab that, blend it together with a few other older coffees, roast it very dark so you don't have that kind of the issue of the taste or the thing there, and they'll sell it off to us. And that's why the coffee's cheaper. That's why it comes out that $9 a pound, like that kind of shit. Like that's why it's that way. Now we buy very small amounts of coffee because we buy a lot of coffee often. Sorry, we buy a lot. We buy coffee often, not a lot. So that's why you'll see like our coffees here. We often go through quite a lot of rotation because I really want fresh coffee that I know I'm going to sell by a certain amount of time.
Okay.
And then I even like the crops. Like I'm always happy to share this with any customer. Like I'll tell you when this coffee was picked, when it was dried, when it was processed, how long it took to ship here, when we got it. Like we have every part of the journey. So yeah, Bulletproof Coffee. I will say that the style of Bulletproof Coffee, where you're adding fats to coffee, love that.
Oh yeah, man, that's so good.
It's a great meal replacement. It can be a great thing in the morning. It's a great way to digest it. The Bulletproof Coffee, like where he's just selling coffee, it's no different than what we do.
Yeah.
And except it's $40 at the store.
Yeah,
you know, it has his brand on it and that kind of stuff.
I met somebody once who he has a company called Biooptimizers. Wade Lightheaded, his name is. He's from Moncton. Anyways, I saw him at the gym one day, and I don't know. I just went up and started talking and stuff, and I told him a little bit about my weight loss journey and how I listened to him on Dave Asprey's podcast. And we started talking about keto because I was like trying out keto at the time. And I remember, I'll never forget, he was like, Dave Asprey is an expert marketer.
Yeah.
And he starts talking about how he just like believes in carbs and stuff. He was a bodybuilder and he's vegan and stuff.
Well, I just like, I blows my mind because I see the store.
And not to like shit on Dave Asprey.
Oh my
I love
gosh.
him. But just like, there's a lot of people who are just expert marketers. And like, there's, he's not bullshitting you. Like, it is the truth. It's just like, there's also other truths.
Well, it's also why his coffee is like, it literally is $35, $40 a bag.
Yeah.
Because, and it's not because that coffee is like worth that amount of money. Like, and some people ask me all the time, like, what $400 bag of coffee? Why is that $400? And why is our coffee like the cheapest bag we sell is $20? And it's because I just said it earlier, like we're spending $4.50 US per pound of coffee.
Yeah.
Plus we lose 15% of it. Plus we do profiling on it. Plus we package it with ethical packaging. Plus I have to keep my roof over my head and stuff. You know, at the end of the day, we're not making that much money off that $20 bag for a normal industry. Now we do it because we want it to be accessible. We want to build that price, that kind of that way of sourcing coffee and selling coffee. Now that $400 bag that I'm pointing to over there, it's a little box on top there. The reason it's $400 is it was an auctioned coffee, it's a rare coffee, and then it scores very well. It's like those three things are going to make a coffee more or less expensive. So when I'm buying coffee, we'll often get grading stores. Now, those are so subjective. Like you can't just believe a grade. It's going to be amazing because it says 89 out of 100.
Yeah.
That's BS. Yeah. You have to taste coffee. You have to understand what you want to do in your menu and your kind of style. Yeah. But that coffee there is, like I said, for me, that's the best coffee I've ever had. It's an award-winning coffee, but it's auctioned. That's why the price goes up every year. It's not because that coffee is actually costing that farmer more money to cultivate. It's just rare and no one else has it, and then you can only buy it through an auction. So that's why the price goes up. Now, a lot of the other coffee, like you look at different origins, like Kenyan coffee is generally quite expensive. And Costa Rican coffee and Kenyan coffee, you're going to pay $6 US comfortably. That's like for a normal run-of-the-mill Kenyan or Costa Rican coffee. We have a Costa Rican right now that's $11.50, and like we don't even blink an eye. That's just a normal price for Costa Rica. It's so different origins have different prices. Yeah. Brazil produces. I think it's like I've heard different versions of this. Like most recently, people have said that Brazil produces about 30% of the world's coffee. I've heard a high number of 70% they produce that much coffee. Regardless, they are the biggest producers of coffee in the world. Their coffee is often generally much cheaper. It's growing at lower elevations, so it's easier to cultivate. Mm-hmm. Like there's not as much infrastructure at 2,200 meters that there is at 700 meters above sea level, right? So it's easier to get. As well, they have farming practices where they use machinery. So that's a big difference than hand selecting coffee. Yeah, it's a labor, right? So you start looking at like why is our coffee more expensive? Well, we're buying something that's been more meticulously sorted. Like, have you ever had a rock in a coffee bag? You ever seen that before?
Not that I know of.
That's very common in cheap coffee.
Okay.
Yeah, so cheap coffee is like quickly done. Often there's ripe coffee thrown in there. They mill it all down. You'll find stones. You'll find other fruit. You'll find freaking corn in there. And that's why it's just like hasn't been sorted very well. Okay. So coffee companies will either buy a destoner, which is like a massive machine you put all your coffee through. That basically the coffee floats, it goes to the bottom. The rocks get sucked out. That kind of stuff. But those are another $50,000, right? So you start looking at what I'd rather pay more money, have a company do that for me, and buy good coffee. So
that's mind-blowing. Yeah, all this stuff. I have heard that high elevation, like people have said that it's better. Is that true or no? Or
so the easy way to think about it is that the higher elevation a coffee is grown at, being a fruit plant, is often it will yield less actual cherries per plant, but you'll have a higher sugar content for each of those cherries. When you're starting with a fresher coffee with higher sugar in it, you're able to get more flavors out, more acidity out of it. Like acidity is often as much as and actually I find acidic, that note, that taste in that word deters a lot of people who've only ever had like say dark roast or a certain type of coffee. It sounds terrifying. Acidic, I don't want acid in my coffee. All coffee has acids in it, you know. Every coffee is malic and citric acid, right? So acidity, preserved acidity, is actually what gives coffee a higher grade and is more sought after. There's this company I work with in Italy called Gardelli. Their motto is acidity is not a crime. Because they're in Italy, which is like the darkest roast place you could probably go for coffee, and yet they have most acidic coffees I've ever had. Yeah, it's really I find that interesting though. I thought that was cool. Yeah, so the higher elevation will give you more florals, give you more fruit flavor, more acids, more of the natural sugars in the coffee.
Okay, and so when people say like shade grown coffee, like what does that mean?
So I love these terms, man. So shade grown coffee can be that literally the coffee was shaded by other plants. Which means it fought more to get more fruit out of it. Now, often what I interpret that as is shade-grown coffee is like an agroforestry term, which is like essentially they're having other plants grow alongside the coffee. It's not like cultivated in a way that's like meticulously organized, like you were growing like a sea of green, 1,000 plants in under one little thing. It's not like that. It's like more wild, if you will. I prefer the term agroforestry because I'm looking for that. Shade-grown, I'm like, this kind of bullshit. Every coffee can be shade-grown. It doesn't really make that much difference in the cup result. When you have diversity in what you're growing, the soil gets more nutrients, gets more rich, gets more in an environment that you want coffee to grow in.
Okay, so that's probably just a word that, like a marketing term almost. Yeah.
Oh my God, coffee's full of them.
Oh yeah.
Even like freshly roasted coffee, like has to be fresh. Like generally, we a lot of our partners,
just like every pizza joint in every town is like the best pizza in town.
Of course, it's like every coffee has to be fresh. No, like a coffee fresh. The fresher coffee is the more carbon dioxide it's going to have in it. The more it's going to have a bit more of a bitter note to it because it's so fresh. Like we rest coffee here.
Okay.
So often, like when we have a bag on there, we're resting it for 2 or 3 weeks before we sell it to you.
Okay, and that reminds me when you said the carbon dioxide, is you taught me this. So the crema on an espresso, is that the carbon dioxide?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I think a lot of people maybe think it's the oils on top or whatever. Maybe it's partly the oils, but it's also partly carbon dioxide.
Big time.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's why when you have a really fresh coffee and you pull an espresso shot, it's like entirely crema.
Yeah.
You ever seen that before? Like I can pull a shot right off the roast, like you don't even see black. It's like just all crema.
Okay.
Yeah, the entire, and then it will start cascading down as it evaporates, and then it will settle on top, but it'll still be really thick. So we had one of my most inspiring guys in coffee, and please check him out. His name is Patrick Rolfe. He owns April Coffee in Copenhagen.
Okay.
This guy is incredible. Everything he does is amazing. We got a coffee bag from him, and just a bag to serve here. And I messaged him. I was like, hey, it was tasting kind of bland. And he was like, Frig, you're already trying to serve that? Like, you need to wait 2 months. I was like, 2 months? Like, I bought this coffee to serve. Kind of thing. I was like, what the hell? But I trust him, so I waited 2 months. Holy shit, that was the best coffee I had this year. Like it was incredible because it had to rest. The way he roasted this coffee was so light, so fresh that it had to like actually delay before we did espresso. And then all of a sudden, like all these tasting notes we got was like blackberry, it was nougat, it was caramel. It was like I'm drilling right now thinking about it. It was so good. Didn't happen until 2 months after roasting we got it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Man, there's such a science behind it that I was so unaware of until I met you and came here.
Oh, but coffee is science.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And also, back to being like
that's why you call it epic chemistry.
Yeah,
coffee.
right.
Yeah.
And well, I also joke that chemistry is also between people.
Yeah.
You know, you make chemistry when you share a beverage, share an experience, share a moment with your community. We have like the 3 C's of our business, I call it. So our first one is community. And we have a mandate in how we use our money here, how we view our community here, and what community means for us. So, you know, we're in a rough part of town, so we give a lot back to Harvest House. Even every week, we sponsored 5 families for Christmas this year at one of the schools, inner city schools. And we have a guy moving in our team who's moving more towards every month we want to engage with a community member. We want to engage more and celebrate more what's happening in our community. The other part is conversation. So when you bring a community into a space here, we serve amazing coffee. We give an experience. Hopefully it spurs some conversation about what's happening in our community, what's actually happening around coffee, what's happening on the ethicality here. And then our last word we use is contemplation. I want people to leave here with a time to contemplate what they experience, to understand that there is a different way to enjoy a beverage like coffee or anything in the world. You know, you can take what we did here and apply it to mushrooms, apply it to whiskey, apply it to what you do in your routine in the morning. Like that's the contemplation moment. And only through contemplation can we actually make change back to our community. And then it starts again. So that's sort of like how we see our use of our business through those C's.
Oh yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, you're really providing a lot more meaning to what it is to drink coffee and experience coffee and just gather with people and have coffee.
That's right.
And meaning is so important. When we attach meaning to what we do, not only do we get better results, but we feel better.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's we struggle so much. A lot of us are online all the time. It's I love it in here where I'll be in a room full of 30 people like this week when we were packed in here, and there's not a single cell phone out. That fires me up. And don't get me wrong, I have nothing against cell phone. I love my Instagram. I go on all my stuff. We all scroll. We go through our shit. But we have to find time that we're not doing that.
Totally.
And I'm an educator. I've been teaching for free, better part of 10 years, and I teach a lot of students in town here, and a lot of that middle school level, and especially through COVID. It's just driven more this need for them to be online all the time, where it's an addiction. You can't stop using it. I'm addicted. I'll sell it right now. I deleted all my apps off my main screens, even though I still have them, because I'd be talking to you normally, and I just open my phone for no reason. I don't even want to open Instagram.
Man. I'm guilty. I'm like I Jordan Best am a compulsive email checker.
Oh my gosh, Conor Conway, I'm right there with you, brother. Like so this is what I'm trying to create a space here that is. Don't come in here and bring your cell phone out every 5 seconds. We want you to learn how to connect again.
Yeah, you want to get your dopamine from real life, meaningful experiences, and not from a device, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry if I seem a little preachy about that. I'm just very passionate about using what we do here for that.
Oh yeah, man. And a lot of people, I think, relate to that. Even though we all are guilty of sort of being slaves to our devices, but all of us deep down, we do desire that authentic connection in person, and to slow down. And if we're going to have coffee, have it at a place where you can slow down.
But it's how many coffee places are doing that now? They all have apps now. Like Starbucks, I don't even have to talk to anyone. I can just go order on an app and go pick my drink up. Like,
Yeah.
and most people online there are just stuck to their phones. Like it's not the same. And you put it out perfectly, Jordan, there before. You're talking about like that Tim Hortons drinker to the Keurig to the Starbucks to something the French press at home to the next levels from there. You know, that's the journey. We're all at different parts of that. And I think one thing that when I started here that I really wanted to get home and maybe we'll start to more towards ending towards that is that this kind of coffee is for everybody.
Yeah.
This is not something that you have to be bougie or uptight or prissy to enjoy great coffee.
Yeah.
Everyone is worthy of great coffee and great experience and great connection. And that's something that I think that the more we elevate what we do in terms of the chemistry of coffee, the roasting of coffee, the sourcing, the ethicality, it should become more and more approachable. And I find a lot of people in my industry are the opposite, where they're like, oh, you don't know about like blooming your pour over? Like you're not worthy of this coffee. Like F off. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather take the Tim Hortons drinker, and I feel like I collect badges now. I have hundreds of Tim Hortons drinkers that I brought to. They're all making AeroPresses at home now. They're making pour overs on the road. They have their camping kits. Like that is so cool to me.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
There's more to coffee than what's just in your cup, and there's more to life than what meets the eye, right?
That's it. Well put.
Yeah.
Well put.
And before we end, I wanted to just say a couple cool coffee facts that we never talked about yet.
Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
Going back to the jittery thing, like people who get, find them maybe themselves too anxious or too jittery with the caffeine. If you pair L-theanine with coffee, it has a synergistic effect and helps relax you. So L-theanine is like an amino acid that basically just helps us relax. So you can buy that supplement, at a health food store or online or wherever, and just try pairing it with coffee for those who love coffee but find it makes them a little bit too jittery, or if they like want to have that extra cup and don't want to feel jittery, like try pairing with L-theanine. Another thing too is that like there's certain DNA markers that basically tell if you're a poor caffeine metabolizer or not. So some people who like say they can't have caffeine, they probably can't. They probably have that DNA marker in them. I don't know the DNA marker.
You know what's funny is I actually do not metabolize caffeine very well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm one of those people.
Yeah, so it just makes you wired like jittery.
But I just but I power through.
Yeah, you power through, yeah.
No, but actually it's come to the point now where I'm very careful what coffees I choose for the day and when I have them. Because I felt myself getting, it was not even jittery, I just don't feel comfortable. It's like it's really uncomfortable feeling. I'll tell the story. I had a customer. This is probably almost a year ago now, and his wife had come to me and said, "We want to come to a coffee tasting, but my husband's allergic to coffee." And I was like, "Oh well, of course he can come. He's in the pay. He can come and just sit down and enjoy." And she's like, "Yeah, but he used to drink coffee and he's fine. Now he feels all weird when he has it." And I started probed questions, and the oils we talked about earlier, that like waxiness to the coffee, those little oils you get, that's a lot of what people get irritated by.
Okay.
So people are like, "Oh, the caffeine's upsetting my stomach." Caffeine's not upsetting your stomach. Like it's gonna be the dirty oils you're having from over roasted coffee. Like so that gentleman in question, he hadn't had coffee in 10 years, and every time he had like bad reactions to it. He found that he could make pour over coffees, light roasted pour over coffees, which have more caffeine on paper. He's been perfect. He drinks like 3-4 coffees a day now. Cool. But it's a method he chose. So the reason being that the oils get stripped by the paper filter. So the paper filter will trap all the coffee oils.
Yeah.
The light roasted coffee is often doesn't have as much of that like carcinogens and other things that have been produced in that.
Yeah.
And on top of that, even the preparation how he's doing it, he's been great. Not a single reaction. And it was about finding the right method and type of coffee for him.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and same with people like who are new to cannabis or something as well. Like if you're feeling anxious and paranoid from cannabis all the time, you're probably having the wrong type of cannabis. There is like a different, just like coffee, there's a huge spectrum out there for what you can find if you want to be a user of that you can find that actually works for your body. Yeah, and even in terms like that coffee, that $400 coffee has like a third of the caffeine of a normal coffee because of the species of coffee that it is. So there's other ways you can even find. We have one on the shelf right now from our friends at Onyx that is naturally half the caffeine.
Cool.
Which I think is great. It's so cool.
Yeah, and then I know there's some types of coffees that have like double the caffeine.
Yeah, so Robusta is what they use in instant coffee. So there's a lot of species of coffee. There's species and varietals. So there's a lot of species of coffee, like 184 or something species. I can't remember what they are. Don't quote me on that one there. But I think we only drink about 2 of them. This is another species there that's been like revitalized, this expensive one, which is also why the freaking price goes up there. Yeah.
So when you order your coffee, do they tell you the species of plants too?
Oh, so they're generally all Arabica.
Okay.
We get the varietal. I often buy coffee based on varietal.
Okay.
So that's like I give the easy way to understand it is like a wine drinker likes Pinot Noir. Like that would be maybe a Pacamara.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Or a bourbon or a geisha or like these, and also they cost different prices.
Yeah.
Like a peaberry or a geisha, like those are going to be very differently priced just because of the varietal and how the plant is growing.
Wow.
And there's actually, I think it's in my bathroom, and we have a map of all the genetics. It's really cool to see. You can actually see like all the different coffee genealogies, where they come from and why they're created. There's really only 2 places in the world that create coffee like phenotypes and new types of coffee.
Wow, man, that's mind blowing.
Yeah, and they're often for disease purposes. Like coffee and humans, we're both very susceptible to disease.
Okay.
So this is where like coffee, like I'll give you an example of Mexico. Mexico's coffee industry got eradicated in like 2013. And it was a disease called coffee rust that basically hit all their crops, destroyed their coffee industry there. Now, a good thing happened there, where at that time it had moved to being like held by huge companies, and they started selling off little plots of land back to like the small business owners. So now the coffee is being cultivated differently, and Red Fox Coffee Merchants are one of these guys in the States that are there in Oakland. They do amazing work in Mexico, and they're honoring a lot of like the indigenous tribes that are there who are growing coffee. They're highlighting them and stuff. It's phenomenal to watch their journey. If you go on Red Fox Coffee Merchants, they have they call it the Foxhole every Friday, and they'll highlight amazing indigenous workers in Mexico and the work they do in Mexico and Peru.
Oh man, you know a lot about coffee.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
That's what I do. Yeah,
that's cool.
It's something I love.
Yeah, I love hearing it. Yeah, I guess like CBD is also another thing you can pair with coffee too. Just back to the
Really, eh?
yeah. CBD is really good to pair with coffee because I mean, well, CBD is just like the part of like the hemp plant that's non-psychoactive.
That's it. Yeah.
That we already have like an endocannabinoid system within us, and you know, when you pair it with coffee, it can like help relax you, but you still get like that energy from the caffeine.
I take CBD every day. Every
Oh
morning.
really?
Yeah.
Oh
every
yeah.
morning,
Oh yeah, man, it makes a big difference. And I've also heard for some people too, like those who are poor at metabolizing caffeine, is when you pair it with like a little bit of fat, that they actually find like the bulletproof or fat coffees to be helpful, because I guess, I don't know, the way the caffeine blends with the fat, like it almost like releases slower into the body.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that at all.
yeah. So for those who don't know what bulletproof coffee or fat coffee is, it's basically just like you take your coffee, usually like a French press, you probably do a pour over too.
Yep.
And you just put a little bit of usually grass-fed butter, organic.
Ghee is the best. Yeah.
But ghee is the best. Ghee
Yeah.
is the best. And then some people add MCT oil to it, and you can add like, I don't know, lion's mane or whatever else you want in it. But generally, like what I like for flavor-wise is just like ghee and French press. Like it's
And with the flavor too, that's what you nailed. The ghee is the best flavor.
Yeah.
People have done coconut oil. You can find people put like 6-7 things into it too. But yeah, no, I find ghee is by far the best, and I metabolize it the best as well. That's
yeah. Yeah. So you've experienced it yourself then?
Oh yeah. Oh my
okay,
gosh,
cool.
I was into that. I was in a huge kick for that.
Oh, really?
I'm less into it now myself,
Yeah.
just because It's funny, like my coffee purpose has changed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where I'm often like, I'll put myself in a work mode, or I'm in like true like trying to disconnect mode. It's like either one of the two. So it's less about like a suppressant for me, appellate suppressant or that kind of stuff. So I'm often more like really excited to taste like exactly what this coffee tastes like and dial this in, as opposed to adding something to it myself. That's just personal. That's not. I would never recommend a customer to do what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think I go through phases myself. Like sometimes I just really enjoy that ghee and coffee, and other times I just like it black. Like just
it feels buttery.
Yeah.
The mouthfeel is wonderful.
It does. Yeah, people think it's nuts when they're like butter and coffee. Well, I'm like, well, do you put milk in coffee? Because butter is just basically a step above milk, and then ghee is a step above butter.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
Do you always drink coffee black, or do you like coffee with milk and cream?
I never put milk and cream in it, but I do. I put ghee. Sometimes like almond milk or soy or oat milk if I want a latte.
Right. Yeah.
But most time it's black or ghee.
Right.
Like the espresso is black. I'll put a little cinnamon in it. I learned that in Cuba.
Yep.
I backpacked Cuba in 2019, and we were like hammocking around in the middle of nowhere, and we stayed with like a Cuban friend, and they're all about the espressos, and they all put cinnamon and a lot of sugar in it. I wasn't about the sugar, but I did enjoy the cinnamon aspect.
And let's be honest, that's really taken from the original way they drink coffee. When you look at like a lot of the Islamic ways of drinking coffee, it's like with star anise, cardamom. If you look at, and different countries in Northern Africa will have a different spice they use in the bottom that they'll brew right into. Yeah. Really cool. It's and that's delicious, by the way. There can be absolutely delicious versions of it. It's so the star anise is really cool. Cardamom is great, and they'll brew literally right onto that.
Cool.
Yeah, so I can do the same pour over, but I'll put like some cardamom in the bottom there and brew into it.
Yeah, that might be cool to try sometime.
Oh my gosh, yes. You ever had Turkish coffee?
Describe Turkish coffee.
Turkish coffee is the finest grind of coffee.
Yeah.
Traditionally, it can be done in a little copper pot, often on the line of a long stick. What they'll do is they'll put the coffee in there. Traditionally done, you might see online. There's like a sandbox with a fire underneath that heats the sand up.
Yeah.
So they put the copper thing descended in the sand. They'll move it around a little bit there, and you'll see it like foam. Hit the foam off. They pour it. Now they pour it through a filter. Before you'd pour it just in a cup, and you get like a lot of grit and grime. They pour it through a filter now. It's like it's very strong. Very, very strong.
Yeah, I've never tried one. I'll have to try one sometime.
Oh, Turkish coffee's cool, man. I also like copper things, so it's pretty next level to have like a copper brewer at home.
Yeah.
I don't have a sand pit though. I think my son would be pretty pissed if I took away a sand pit. But.
Yeah. Well, it was funny when I was in Cuba because he thought we were crazy for just wanting big cups of coffee because they're so used to having the espressos. That's just their thing, and we're so westernized and like just to like have all these materialistic items, I guess, and just have big things all the time, and like we have this like limiting belief that like bigger is better, and ultimately like coffee, it's almost like we overconsume coffee by always going for big cups, number one. And number two, what's interesting about it is like when you have just an espresso, you're almost like forced to enjoy it more, even though it's like a tiny cup. You're just like you're appreciating it more than you would like a full cup, because the full cup, a lot of people just like they'll go get their Tim Hortons extra large and not even think about it.
Terrifies me.
You're just like, yeah, it's a terrifying thought. But when you're having like a little espresso, it's like, oh man, I'm gonna make this last. You're consciously deciding to make this last a little bit
sips,
longer.
little things.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that aspect, and so.
Well, I think we're the only place in the world that has big coffees.
Yeah.
There's nowhere else that does this.
Yeah.
You want to terrify an Italian man like from Italy, like or woman, bring them a freaking extra large coffee. Like, what's this dirty soup water you're bringing me? Like, it's I don't get that either. I don't ever drink more than like what you saw me drink right now. Like that's how I enjoy coffee.
Yeah.
Is like literally like 150 mils.
Oh yeah.
Little one here.
Yeah.
And plus, it's also fun for me. I can make another one later on. Like it's you just change your recipe. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's all recipes. It's
That's right. You can enjoy it more that way. Well, yeah, man, Frig, I appreciate you sitting down and having a conversation with me. It was awesome.
This was so much fun, man.
It was, yeah.
Let's do it again sometime.
It was, yeah, we will for sure. Yeah, if we can think of some more stuff to talk about coffee or whatever.
Oh, I will never run out of stuff to talk about coffee.
It sounds like you won't. But yeah, I'll post your links to the description so people can find you and buy your coffee and all that jazz. And
wicked! Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks very much, man.
And thanks for sharing with me. This is great. Nice connection.
Nice connection.
That's how I like it.